Teachers of Reddit, who was the worst parent you've ever had to deal with? My wife is a teacher and had a kid who kept asking to stay after school. This puts my wife home late, but she cares about her job, so she kept doing it and tutoring him. Except that she noticed this kid doesn't really need any help. He did all his homework, did just fine on the tests, and she thought maybe he just had a confidence problem. So she asks him one day and he said his mom tells him he needs to go. So she tried to boost the kid a bit by saying, "You don't have to come tomorrow. Tell your mom that I said you are doing just fine and should enjoy your off hours from school. It's just as important." Something like that. Then my wife gets called down to the office the next day to discuss this insanely long shitfire email from the mom to the principal, who said that my wife is actively denying her son a fair chance at learning or some crap. Well, anyway, dig it down and sum it up. Statements back and forth. Then the mom starts shitfire with another one of his teachers with the same issue and the whole cycle began again. They eventually got her to admit that she was trying to keep her son at school because she was physically locking him out of the house until she got home from work. TLDR. Of all the horrible parents blaming my wife for their kids' shortcomings in her class, the one that tried to use her as free daycare was the one that stood out the most to me. This is easy. This was over 35 years ago. I once had twin girls in my sophomore general business class. They were nice girls. Didn't talk much. It didn't take me long to realize that they were struggling. They never completed any quizzes or tests, just returned the papers blank. No homework. I tried contacting the parents, couldn't reach them. Talked to the principal, the counselor, the social worker. No luck. Finally I went to the house. The girls were there alone. Said their mother was at the store. I stopped back at the house a couple of times later in the week. Still nothing. Eventually the girls didn't show up in class and the principal said they had left school. I never met this parent, but she was definitely the worst one I ever had to deal with. Jay's mom. This story is a colleague's. The science teacher said, "For this unit, I'll be taking you all to Mars." Jay's mom comes in person, yelling about how ain't her kid going to know Mars. She ain't give permission for that. True story. You signed Ms. Frizzle's permission slip, so we're all going. Not me, but my wife. She teaches 5th grade. There is a child who regularly comes to school smelling like fesses. When asked if she needs to go to the restroom or anything, she'll just say no and deny any mess when asked in private. On 1 or 2 occasions, she's gotten up from her seat, and there has been a urine puddle that she's been sitting in. She claims that she's possessed, and will never do any work. She has constant outbursts, where she will say she's going to kill herself or other students. My wife has tried everything with the school counselor and school psychologist to rectify any issues, taking it as far as contacting DCFS. This includes involving the parents, but the parents equals just mom, as she has full custody of the girl for some reason. She claims the dad is a danger to the girl. However, my wife has met the dad, who is trying to get legal custody now, and says he's in a much better situation to take care of this child. Mom will not get involved. She will set appointments to appease the administrators and then she doesn't show up. In emails, she will say she's going to get the daughter some counseling or other mental health assistance, but never does. The school psychologist had the state mental health dep to prescribe medications to control her myriad of issues, but the mom won't buy them because they're too expensive. However, she then shows up to class yesterday with 2 store-bought cakes and other stuff for the kids to eat for the girl's birthday. As unfortunate and sad that this is, the sweet taste of Walmart cakes is not stronger than the odors and mental state of this girl. She has been destroyed by her mother. I'm an assistant faculty at a major university and teach organic chemistry labs. Because of the size of the labs, the course sections are largely taught and graded by teaching assistants. One day, one teaching assistant noticed that a paper had been turned in by a student he didn't have, who we'll call Mary. He also was missing a paper from his student, who I shall call Bob. The TA tracked down Mary's TA to talk about it. What they discovered is that Bob and Mary had been turning in identical papers for the entire year, only switching the name at the top. But because of how large the university is and because we didn't use any type of plagiarizing checking software at the time, it's purely by luck that we caught this. Submitted the work to the Academic Integrity Board. thought it was a pretty clear-cut case and that they'd get XFs on their transcripts, and wiped our hands of the situation. Turns out, Mary's dad is a lawyer. He argued the legality of our syllabus and how plagiarism isn't clearly defined enough for the students and that we couldn't produce sufficient proof of who cheated off of who, though our policy states anyone involved shall receive equal punishment. Full stop. As opposed to going to court and letting the legal fees build up, the Academic Integrity Board caved and told us to simply alter the transcript to show that Mary had withdrawn from the course. Bob was left to burn. Not me, but my mom, in her 3rd or 4th year of teaching, was given a student with Downs. While not generally an issue for my mom, this student was functioning at level of a 6-month-old child. Sarah had 2 full-time aides, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech, and many other special services, while being fully included in normal day-to-day classroom activities. When Sarah was in the classroom, she would constantly scream from her desk at the back of the room, while the aide would try to get her to quiet down. In an attempt to get her to communicate, they gave her a speech board with buttons she could press to get what she wanted. The buttons had her favorite foods on them, so when Sarah wasn't screaming, you had the speech board yelling out chicken nugget, Doritos, chicken nugget. There were instances where she would eat her Doritos, masturbate, and then lick her fingers clean. She also could not use the restroom and was in diapers, which had to be changed by the aides. So why was this student in a normal education classroom instead of a special day class? Her parents sued the school district to force her into the general education classroom via multiple lawsuits, not just against the school district, but against Sarah's teachers as well. Any negative word about their daughter's capabilities, they would start a lawsuit. At every IEP, there were more lawyers than school staff. During one IEP, they asked what my mom was teaching in English. She said they were reading Maniac McGee, which was about racism. They asked her how she was going to modify her curriculum to accommodate Sarah's needs, to which she responded, "I cannot teach about racism to a 6-month-old. The lawyers asked Sarah's mom how she could modify her curriculum to explain racism, and the mom said give her a piece of white paper and a piece of black paper and have her tear them up. The mother would randomly show up at school and watch the classroom to see that their daughter was being included. Kids reading a book popcorn style. Sarah had to have a chance to read as well. Sarah's aide covering Sarah's mouth to get her to be quiet. Complain to the school. Get the aide fired. File a lawsuit against the school for not providing the aides required in the last lawsuit, and a lawsuit against the aide for harming their daughter. The parents were just unwilling to accept the situation that their child would not be going to college and would be lucky to ever be able to get a job. They had a son as well who was actually pretty smart, but he was ignored and his sister's educational needs placed above his own. The parents had zero involvement in his schooling, which was really sad. My mom ended up doing a good enough job to not get sued, but she had multiple aides either get fired or quit due to the situation. It was a nightmare for that entire year, with my mom coming home crying every night. Worst experience in her 20 years of teaching. This one is just sad. My sister is a 2nd grade teacher and last year she had a boy in her class with tons of behavioral problems. She teaches at a very low income school and most of her kids tend to have issues, but he was one of the worst. Turns out his dad had run down and shot his mom at a McDonald's in front of him. At that time he lived with a friend of his mother. How that happened I don't know, but she was awful. Complete and utter neglect. He had a stomach virus and was throwing up at school. She refused to pick him up. She would lock him out of the house until dark. The cops found him wandering around downtown, brought him home and still nothing was done. The school had called CPS already. The boy was in counseling at school. Just overall horrible situation. My sister started to really work with him and they ended up being really close. Eventually he moved in with his grandparents, and things got a bit better for him. His grandmother isn't very nice, but his grandfather is very supportive even though he has health issues. They are also raising 4 other grandkids. He totally turned around in school and got into sports. My sister still goes to every single one of his games even though he is not in her class anymore. She just found out however that the grandparents are divorcing and the grandfather is too sick to keep him. so he has to live with his crappy grandmother, and she plans on moving out of state. The only two supportive adults in his life are my sister and his grandfather, and both of them will be taken away from this 10-year-old who has already had a crappy life. I am not a teacher, but I wanted to give a shout out to some of my past teachers. My mother and stepdad were really bad druggies and alcoholics, and I was usually the primary caretaker for my younger brother and sister whenever I wasn't in school. I was an awesome student, A+ honor roll, partly due to my teacher grandma and also due to my wanting to get the heck out of my crappy town ASAP, but that never stopped my mother. She would get it in her head that my teachers were trying to keep me away from her, or were mistreating me by giving me homework. It never mattered that I told her I enjoyed the homework, or the feeling of needing to push myself harder every time I got to B. She would still get P. This would end with her coming up to my school and passing the office to stomp into my classroom, go to the teacher and start to scream, like red-faced, shrill swear words at the teacher. I also don't know how she showed up during my class period every time, but she did, so that was a special level of embarrassing. My teachers, in the 8th and 9th grade, there were 3 that this happened to over the course of the 2 years, never took it out on me, and would escort her into the hallway. I never knew how they did it, but they would either calm her down or manage to get her to leave. Still pee off, but she would leave. They never called the cops after realizing the first 2 times that the police wouldn't do anything but take her home, and CPS said it wasn't anything they would look into. These teachers are awesome and amazing, and were able to still control their classrooms during this. After every outburst was a small conversation where any questions could be safely asked, and somehow no students ever bullied me about it. Well, one time one student started laughing and calling me the crazy WS daughter, so I kneed him in the nuts. The teacher looked at both of us and let us decide if that made us even and we wanted to drop it, or to go to the office for them to sort out. We became fast friends. TLDR. Had a crazy mom who screamed at teachers for no reason. Teachers stayed cool and in control of everything. Still had a good time at school. Teachers are awesome and need to be paid more money. My cousin is a teacher. She once had a parent-teacher conference with a single parent and the other teachers of one particular student. So there's like 4 or 5 other teachers sitting in this guidance counselor's office, and after waiting 20 minutes past the scheduled time, the mother finally shows up. The woman came in and immediately went off on all of the teachers. Despite scheduling the conference, the woman kept claiming that she didn't have time to do this, and that she works 3 jobs and 120 hours a week. She said her kid just doesn't do homework, but she does fine on the tests. All at once, the teachers started interrupting each other and pulling out evidence showing that the kid was failing not 1 or 2 tests, but all of the tests in all of her classes. Giving up, the parents said whatever, she'll drop out anyway. She's got a full ride to Auburn on a dynasty scholarship. So finally it becomes quite clear that the parent just wants her kid to get moved to different classes to match the classes her friends are in. Hearing enough, the guidance counselor responds in a gloriously pleasant voice, "I'm afraid that's not going to happen. Someone has to teach your child that she is not going to get whatever she wants." It was both the worst and the best parent-teacher conference. I had a parent call me because I took away her daughter's iPad. She was 8 and telling the other students that if they didn't own an iPad it's because either their parents are poor or didn't love them. The mom came in and before she meeting could get underway, her phone rang. She didn't excuse herself and began having a business meeting right in front of me. She even got out her iPad to take notes with her super long fingernails tapping on the glass. When she was done, she thanked me for everything and left. Apparently at one teacher's retirement speeches he recalled a parent he had to call multiple times to explain their son's poor behavior. The parent responded, "I don't call you when he doesn't clean his room." Oh man, I could go on for ages about some of the ridiculous parents I have at my school. There's one particular group of them who seem to really have it out for our school. They practically storm every local school council meeting. These are kind of like PTA, except they have very real power and in fact vote whether or not to rehire the principal every 3 years, as well as most other meetings that involve parents. Bilingual Advisory Committee, Parental Advisory Committee. I'm too tired to come up with any other ones, and give everyone a hard time bringing up issues that really only affect their children. One in particular will literally storm into the classroom first thing in the morning if her daughter's grade slips anywhere below an A, which will of course happen because she's not always the most capable student. The thing that really gets on my nerves is when they bombard you with emails demanding a copy of every assignment their child is missing, all the rubrics you have used to determine their child's grades, and make up extra assignments to bring up their child's grade. This is a ton of extra work on my part that frankly I shouldn't have to do. However, our principal is way too lenient on them and will sometimes flat out tell me to just change their grade to get them off mine and her back. This is not what I signed up for when I became a teacher, and I am beyond disgusted at how people view and treat teachers today. Sad to say, I don't see myself staying in the classroom for much longer and will probably have to go back to school in order to change careers. I know people will say that I have a recession-proof job and I should stick it out, but things are at an all-time low when it comes to the respect we deserve, and I only see things getting worse. Final rant. Don't ever, and I mean ever, tell any teacher when they are griping about the stress of their job that they should have known what they signed up for. The most ignorant thing I ever heard was someone tell a colleague of mine, "I know the kids and parents can give you a hard time, but you knew that going into this career and you knew what you would be paid, frick you." How the heck can anyone just tell someone that they should just accept being disrespected and taken for granted by society? Anyways, if there's anyone here who is thinking about becoming a teacher, I won't say don't do it. I will say to be absolutely certain that you know what you are getting into. Because if I had known how little I would be appreciated and all the unreasonable demands that would be made of me with the expectation that I shouldn't complain because it's for the kids, I would have never gone down this career path. My grandmother has been an English teacher for many years at the high school and college level. While teaching high school English, she was contacted by a parent that complained that her child didn't feel comfortable that a Confederate flag was on display in the classroom. Needless to say, it was an English flag that was on display. I toughed first grade. One of my students stole another student's juice during lunch, so I wrote a note home to his mom to let her know. She wrote "liar" on the note and returned it to me the next day, so I called her. She then screamed at me that I and my assistant principal who were making up lies about her angel. I don't have time to pee most days, but this woman thinks I have time to invent stupid lies about her terrible kid. Then she decided she was done talking and sent her baby daddy to kick my butt. This woman sent a grown man to an elementary school at 9:30 on a Tuesday to assault a teacher. I had to take my class to another teacher's room and all of the first class teachers had to keep their doors locked because her son stole another kid's juice. WTF. Not a teacher, but used to be a monitor on youth camps, age 7 to 16. We had to walk the group, 40 kids, from our sleeping place to the riding school, horse driving camps, every day. The street where the school was in is a very narrow farmer's road, but people constantly use it as a shortcut. They also seem to think they turn into Kimi Räikkönen or something and race through it. One kid kept moving to the middle of the road, just being an insufferable brat, working on all monitors' nerves. Halfway through the week, there was a parent visitor evening, where the parents would accompany the group to the riding school, right behind our group of kids. The little brat starts doing the same again, standing in the middle of the street. I keep telling him to get back in group. He just keeps playing the game. And there comes another Räikkönen wannabe, racing like a maniac. Kid doesn't even notice the rocket that's coming his way. I grab him by the arm and pull him from the middle of the road, back into the group just in time for him to be roadkill. Less than a minute later I get a good slap to the back of my head and the mom is yelling my half to deafness, because I shouldn't touch a child, for no reason whatsoever, and I hurt his arm and blah blah blah. I'm just standing there very surprised that she wasn't happy I saved her little brat of a son from becoming a stain on some redneck's windshield, but she keeps going on. 2 weeks after the camp, I get a telephone call from the organization I was working for, asking me to come in for an evaluation. It turns out the B issued a formal complaint because I kept a little brat out of harm's way. TL. Doctor. Saved a little brat from becoming roadkill. Mom uses me as punching bag and issues a formal complaint with my employer. Don't see it as saving a brat. See it as saving the rest of the kids from traumatization. I was a year out of grad school and teaching college freshmen for the first time. I had this one parent who fought all his son's battles. He was outraged I gave his son a B on a paper. He actually came to my office and argued with me. He told me he had a PhD and was smarter than me. Once, the kid misspelled my name on a paper's header, and the father insisted his spelling of my name was correct. Not a teacher, but a parent, so you interact with a lot of teachers. I can tell you that the parent who can see no flaws in their child and can't accept the fact that the kid behaves differently when they are not around are a pox to the school system. Listen lady, Ethan, Logan, Dylan, Tyler, Aiden or Jackson are mean little suckers that don't listen, and I'm guessing it's partially your fault. Here's one that I think you'll like. My uncle, incredible guy, one of the smartest men I've ever come across. Studied on scholarship at Oxford and got honours, but never had the opportunity beyond that to reach his potential, and worked at a state-funded school in one of Australia's dodgiest towns. His history class was full of kids in gangs and kids who'd been in juvie. One day some kid just cracked, started screaming and swearing, and when my uncle told him to pipe down he pulled a knife and lunged at him. Just to put it in some context, my uncle had always wanted to go to Vietnam as a kid and had taught himself jujitsu and become a ridiculously good shot with his mail order make yourself Swedish assault rifles. So this kid lunges at him and he just grabs his wrist and disarms him and holds him until the cops come. When the mother turns up with the principal and has my uncle fired for attacking her son, it was a pretty much a downward spiral from then on for him, which is really sad considering his capacity. I am a new teacher, so not a huge well to draw from, but we had a parent-teacher conference this year with the parent of a kid who was and is failing abysmally. In that meeting, the father of the student said that he knows exactly what us teachers are dealing with and going through, because he took education classes at a community college so he could learn what teachers learn. I looked at a co-worker of mine in the meeting and had to hold back a laugh. The way he said it was so condescending it was almost funny. That was 4 months ago, and the student hasn't improved and the dad won't answer emails. I'm a lifeguard, so there are a lot of rules I have to follow to actually keep my job. This little boy cut his foot on a seashell and only required a band-aid, so I patched him up and went on with my day. 5 minutes later his mother comes over, literally dragging the kid through the sand, and cursed me out for putting a band-aid on him without telling her. Proceeded to call my boss and curse him out as well. TLDR, mom's a psycho. This is kind of a long read, but here it goes. I'm a kindergarten teacher and most of the parents I meet are wonderful, kind people. Most of them. Earlier this year our principal called me and my colleagues to a meeting regarding a 4-year-old girl and her 3-year-old sister. The 4-year-old was starting in our group and her sister in another. We never meet with the principals when new kids are starting, so we were a little curious as to why he wanted to see us. He told us that the girls had been removed from their home and placed in foster care, and that the foster parents, let's call them Matt and Jenny, wanted to meet with one of us as well to discuss certain issues. I was the one that was going to be the contact person, the one that takes care of the girl the first few weeks and provides the family with all the information needed, so I was the one that would be meeting with them. The foster mother was a very kind yet worried woman that obviously cared about the girls and their well-being. She told me that the police had to take the girls with force from their previous home and that had been very traumatic for them. She told me that the parents had severe drug addictions and the girls had been treated very badly. She also told me that the girls got to see their mother 2 days every month. I was both nervous and excited to meet the girl. She was shy but curious, and after the first day she had already found her best friend. Everything was going great after that. After 2 weeks she went to the mother's house, and when she returned to us the week after that she was so different. She was sad all the time, hit her friends for no reason, and screamed at everyone that tried to talk to her. After a couple of hours she calmed down a little and I finally got to talk to her. Mommy said I can't love Jenny and Matt. She said I can only love her and that she will hurt me if I love them. But Jenny is so nice. She hugs me a lot and I get to help her cook. Mommy says Daddy is angry. He didn't want me to leave. He screamed so much when the police came and took me away. Mommy says I can't be here and play anymore. She wants to take me away. She was crying so hard and my heart broke 1,000 times. Only 4 years old and she knows pain some adults can't even imagine. Right now the foster parents are fighting to keep the girls. We have no idea how it's going to turn out. The mother does not understand at all why her kids got taken from her. The 4-year-old didn't even know how to chew real food. That mother is the worst I have ever met, by far. Oh, this is a good one. I posted it before but I'd love to share it here. I have a student who I teach history and English, and this student is generally neither a hard worker nor a fan of either history or English. I spoke with his father during a PTA meeting, and of course he cut me off before I had even gotten 2 or 3 words in to talk about a number of things. Among them, how he had gotten the highest grades in the history of the University of Miami, how he was writing an extensive book about Napoleon's life. His kid was getting fairly low grades in history, so I assume he didn't pass those skills on. General rant about how he's much smarter than all the other parents. I want to say he used the phrase miles ahead. It was strange overall because he's a fairly large man who's pretty old. I later found out that he wears a toupee and who speaks in a very intense, assertive way, complete with finger shaking and emphasis on certain words for dramatic effect. I was completely unable to actually discuss his son's academic situation. Now that's not even the strangest encounter. The child, besides being a student who wasn't very motivated or hardworking, was also pretty troll-y. He'd make remarks about how amazing Hitler was all the time, and he'd discuss him pretty regularly. Bear in mind, we were talking about ancient history at his grade level. Hitler and World War II don't come up until high school and he was a middle schooler. I explained to him very candidly that it was inappropriate and that he was actually mistaken about Hitler. Because he kept bringing him up, I assigned a reading task for him that dealt with Hitler's surprising popularity in popular culture. He responded with a totally irrelevant paper about why Hitler was a great ruler. I realized at this point that he was not exactly trolling, and that he actually did think of Hitler as a good leader. And because he wasn't a well-read or informed student, I naturally assumed that the source of these attitudes was his idiot father. I didn't accept his extra work, telling him that he basically didn't do the task. It was a reading response essay. He totally ignored that in favor of Hitler propaganda, no doubt passed along to him by the aforementioned idiot. Later, I ran into his father and I was informed that I was teaching propaganda in the classroom. I later received a fax from him, because, genius that he wasn't able to figure out email, explaining that I was basically disseminating Israeli propaganda. It also listed American atrocities in World War II and brought up several anti-imperialist talking points. I realized his dad was one of those Arabs. He's a Syrian, who's so fundamentally opposed to the West that he's basically cool with Hitler. Needless to say, it was strange. I'm not a teacher, but when I was in elementary school I was a rather fat and unpopular kid. On one occasion I had a mother on a field trip look me up and down and turn to a group of kids who often made fun of me and tell them something that made them laugh. On a second occasion I had a mother prevent me from going to a classmate's birthday party that most of my 4th grade class went to, only to find out later that she made fun of me as being a pig at the party from other classmates. I mean, I get that I was the fat unpopular kid, but shouldn't those mothers have been acting their age? They were in their 30s and 40s. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.